The house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in a town that still put plastic pumpkins on the porches in October and left them up until the first hard freeze. It was a two-story colonial with white siding that had gone the color of old bone and black shutters that hung slightly crooked, as if the house itself had grown tired of standing up straight. The price was $70,000 under market. The realtor kept saying the words, "motivated sellers," like a prayer. Emma and Jake Harlan were 27 and 29. They had been married 14 months. They had a yellow lab named Buster, who still chewed the corners of furniture when he got nervous, and a joint savings account that was thinner than either of them liked to admit. When the inspector came back with a clean report, and the sellers agreed to cover closing costs, they signed the papers before anyone could change their minds. The previous owners were a couple in their 60s, named the Tollivers. They met Emma and Jake only once, in the empty living room, with the lights off because the power hadn't been switched over yet. Mrs. Tolliver had the kind of face that looked like it had been used hard and put away wet. Mr. Tolliver stood behind her with his hands in his pockets and did not speak until the very end. "There's one thing," Mrs. Tolliver said. Her voice was dry, like leaves scraping across pavement. "The basement door stays locked. There's no handle on the inside. We had it that way for a reason. Promise us you won't open it." Jake laughed, the short, nervous laugh of a man who thought he was being told a local ghost story. "What's down there, bodies?" Mr. Tolliver looked at him then. His eyes were the washed-out blue of a winter sky. "Just leave it alone," he said. "That's all we ask." They left the key to the basement door on the kitchen counter. It was an old skeleton key, heavier than it looked, with a piece of worn red ribbon tied through the bow. Emma put it in the junk drawer and tried to forget about it. For the first 3 weeks, the house felt almost normal. They painted the upstairs bedroom a soft gray. They hung cheap art from Target. Buster claimed the sunny patch of floor in front of the living room windows and refused to move for anyone. At night, the house made the usual settling noises, pipes ticking, floorboards shifting, the refrigerator cycling on and off. Jake told himself that was all it was. Then the knocking started. It began on a Thursday night in late October. Emma was already asleep. Jake had stayed up watching a game with the sound low. Sometime after midnight, he muted the television and sat in the dark, listening to the rain against the windows. That was when he heard it. 3 slow, deliberate knocks from directly beneath the living room floor. He froze with the remote in his hand. The sound came again. 3 knocks, measured, patient. Jake stood up and walked to the basement door at the end of the hallway. It was a solid oak door, darker than the others, with no handle on this side either, only a heavy deadbolt and a keyhole. He pressed his ear against the wood. Silence. He waited a full minute. Nothing. He went back to the couch and told himself it was the water heater, or the furnace, or the house adjusting to the cold. The next night it happened again. Same time. Same 3 knocks. This time Buster sat up from his place by the window and growled low in his throat, staring at the floor as if he could see through it. On the 3rd night, Jake was ready. He sat on the bottom step of the stairs with a flashlight and the skeleton key in his pocket. At 12:47 a.m., the knocking came. 3 solid impacts that seemed to travel up through the soles of his feet. He stood, walked to the door, and unlocked it before he could change his mind. The door swung inward on silent hinges. The basement stairs descended into perfect darkness. The air that rose from below was cold and carried a faint smell of wet stone and something sweeter, like old flowers left too long in water. Jake turned on the flashlight. The beam found bare concrete steps, a rough wooden handrail, and at the bottom a concrete floor that looked clean, almost swept. He went down. The basement was larger than he expected. The beam of the flashlight swept across empty space. No furnace visible yet, no water heater, no boxes left by the previous owners, just open floor and load-bearing posts. In the far corner, the light caught something that made him stop. A second door. It was set into the foundation wall itself, made of the same dark oak as the one upstairs. This one had a handle, an old brass handle, green with age. There was no lock. Jake stood there for a long time, listening. The only sound was the soft drip of water somewhere in the dark and the distant muffled thump of rain above. He should have gone back upstairs. He should have locked the door behind him and put the key somewhere he would never find it again. Instead, he walked over and closed his hand around the brass handle. It turned easily. The door opened onto a narrow hallway that should not have existed. The walls were the same concrete as the basement, but the floor was packed earth. The air was colder here, and the sweet smell was stronger. Jake's flashlight beam traveled only about 15 feet before it was swallowed by the dark. He took one step forward, then another. Behind him, the door to the main basement swung shut with a soft, final click. He spun around. The handle on this side of the door was gone. There was only smooth wood and the outline of where a handle had once been. He pushed. The door did not move. He threw his shoulder against it. Nothing. The flashlight beam trembled in his hand. From deeper in the hallway came 3 slow knocks. Jake backed up until his shoulders hit the wall. The knocks came again, closer this time. He could hear breathing now, wet, labored, as if something had been holding its breath for a very long time and had finally decided to let it out. He ran. There was nowhere to run except forward. The hallway stretched longer than any basement had a right to. The walls began to show old wallpaper in places, water-stained and peeling. A child's drawing was pinned to one section with a rusted thumbtack, stick figures under a black sun. The flashlight caught the edge of a small wooden chair, then a broken doll with one eye missing. The sweet smell had turned thick and cloying. The knocking was right behind him now. Jake's foot caught on something soft. He went down hard, the flashlight skittering away across the dirt floor. In the bouncing light, he saw what he had tripped over. A pile of old clothes arranged in the rough shape of a person, arms folded neatly across the chest. The clothes were the same style Mrs. Tolliver had been wearing the day they signed the papers. The flashlight died. In the absolute dark, something cold and dry closed around his ankle. Upstairs, Emma woke to the sound of Buster barking hysterically at the basement door. She found the door standing open and the skeleton key still in the lock. The stairs led down into a darkness that felt deeper than it should have. She called Jake's name until her voice broke. There was no answer. When the police came, they searched every inch of the basement. They found the furnace, the water heater, the usual clutter of a house that had been lived in for decades. They did not find a second door. They did not find a hallway. They did not find Jake. Mrs. Tolliver's phone number had been disconnected. The realtor said the Tollivers had left town the same day the sale closed and had not given a forwarding address. The only thing they left behind was a single note, folded neatly and tucked under the kitchen phone. "We told you not to open it. Some houses need someone to keep the door shut. Now it's your turn." Emma put the house on the market the following week. It sold in 4 days, still under market value. The new owners were a young couple with a dog. When they asked about the basement door, why it had no handle on the inside, Emma only smiled the way Mrs. Tolliver had smiled and said, "Just leave it alone. That's all we ask." At night, if you stand in the living room of that house on the cul-de-sac and listen very carefully, you can sometimes hear 3 slow knocks coming from under the floorboards. And if you press your ear to the basement door, you might hear something else. Breathing, waiting, patient as stone.